All right, I'm back with Defying Finance. We're going to go over the breakdown of the United States Case Shiller Home Price Index. But first, I'm not allowed to advertise other social media as I'm recording this through tradingview.com. So I'm not sure where you're watching this video from, but like it, share it, comment on these things, have some discussions with other people, throw your ideas out there, but also watch an ad. I don't know what you end up seeing, but watch an ad because it supports the free content that people give out there. So not just mine, but other places you might be watching videos and supporting people. Make sure you watch an ad. It doesn't cost you anything but a little bit of time, and different places pay people to do this. But anyway, let's look at the United States housing market. Now, I believe we are heading into a recession. Now, a recession is defined as 2 negative quarters of GDP, but that is always looking in the rearview mirror. Generally, the government says everything's great, and then we get a quarterly report and say, "Oh, whoa, look, we have negative GDP." That's 1 quarter. Then you're basically 6 months into it before the government finally says, "Oh, look, what do you know? We're in a recession." So I think this is that point where we will begin to say, hey, at this time, we actually were already deeper into that recession than everybody thought. But let's take a look at this because you're hearing a lot of stuff, like I'm sure um, I am hearing, about how housing is just going to keep going up. I sold my other properties in 2018, or my other property in 2018. I sold another one prior to that because it just seemed like it was getting a little bit carried away. And of course, it got a lot more carried away. But generally, that is because you get these parabolic moves right at the end of these markets. But I sold out, made some good money on it, so I'm totally fine with that. Um, but I would be questioning as a real estate investor right now where you are buying. Get very strict. Areas that I'm looking at, maybe in Florida, there are a lot of people migrating to those areas, and these prices here aren't necessarily going to reflect individual markets. So that's important to understand here. We're talking about a macro level across the United States as I'm going over this video. So there are going to be pockets that do really, really well during this time. So be looking for those areas, but pay attention to migration patterns. What's the affordability, right? If prices have gone up a lot there, but what if pays only got up, 4 or 5%, but home prices and rent, they're up 25%. That becomes a problem really quickly. But anyway, let's look at this chart. You don't typically see it presented this way. I'm using the year over year percentage of change. Typically, you see the Case Shiller represented like this when other people are charting this, but I think it's really important to look at it this way. Let me squeeze that down a little bit there. So I think it's really important to look at it this way. Now, if we were to see our zero here, right? I have a line here. I'm not going to show it to you yet. This would be an area where basically with the year over year change, in order for this yellow line to start to turn downward, you would need a negative percentage of growth, right? So it has to fall below this point before you start to see this line go down. So let's say this fell to 4%, right? That just means it's not climbing anymore at 20%, for example, year over year. It's now climbing at 4%. So it had a 16% decline, you could say, right? Well, it's actually larger than that. But anyway, it's not producing at 20% anymore, is what I'm trying to say. So this line here at 4% means prices are still going up year over year at 4%. It's just 4 instead of 20. That means this yellow line would continue to trend higher even though you see this coming down. So that I'm just trying to explain that so you understand that this can continue to go higher even if this goes down. What I'm talking about is something like this happening, where you could see here's our zero, right? It had fallen down to, at this point, it was negative 18% year over year. So if we go back, let's say right here, let's start at January of 09. Let's go to January of 08 right after this. So we see right here, we're at about pretty much 19%. Let's go to January of 2008, right around here, right? It was 15%. So let's say that year it fell 15%. This year it fell 18%. So you could see that it's still increasing its decline, right? That's all that is really showing. But this gives us a completely different picture than this. So it just gives us more data to look at. And I also have an RSI down here, which is kind of interesting to use for these types of indexes. But anyway, I think where we are heading is something very similar to this. It is a different environment than we had with the subprime crisis in real estate, with residential homes, although we still have some of those issues. What you're about to start hearing in March is, remember when they made everybody, well, they didn't make you, but you could stop paying your mortgage. You didn't have to pay your rent for a while. Well, they also did that with commercial real estate. Now, it was never changed with commercial real estate to where it had to be reported as a default, right? So, starting, I believe, in March, um, these have to start to be reported. And I think we are going to see a massive spike in defaults. We just haven't had to report them this entire time. So, what happens to banks, right? Who has those loans? So that could be the new prime type of crisis. We don't know. We're going to see, but I have a feeling that's going to be pretty bad. But anyway, you can see real estate has a very slow decline. They're not like stocks. I'm sure a lot of you are aware of that, right? Where this point to this point is 3 years, depending on the chart you're looking at. Like this is 2006. Some of these charts are peaking in 2005, depending on the settings you have. So really, some of the properties I was buying were back. The property I bought for our primary residence was around 2012. I was looking at the charts thinking, we're pretty low. Technically, we should go lower, but I'm okay with what we're buying at this point, right? I can afford it. Um, I see the government has printed a bunch of money from here to there, so they could begin to go back up. But I had an exit strategy before I ever even bought that property. I told my wife that, hey, as soon as we hit X price, if it gets there in a shorter amount of time than many years, we're selling. And that's what we did. We had another property we also bought a couple of years later, and we ended up selling that too. But anyway, looking at this right now, I want to show you some of this stuff I added here. So here's our zero line, right? This gives us something to go by. Now, if you look over here, we see 2004 was really when we hit our peak looking at the year-over-year price increase. But in 2006 were the nominal prices where we hit our peak overall. So that's why it's nice to look at these different indicator or our different calculations on these charts. But anyway, looking at this down here, I would kind of treat this like the S&P 500, right? Where I'm looking for this old area to become support because we have printed a lot more money, right? So, or currency, as some would say it. But these prices may not come down to what you have seen back in this time because nominally we have a lot more dollars floating around in the system. Now, a lot of this will get wiped out. A lot of debt will get destroyed, but I don't know that you're going to see prices that we saw back in 2012. So I would expect on a national average, we see prices down in this area compared to here. That's all I'm really trying to say. Now, you can see what's happening right here. We haven't this information ends in November of 2021. Okay. I think I'm projecting at a slow turn. Remember, real estate is slow, sometime between this point. So about June, July of 2025 and 2026. I think depending on the climate, are we in a war with Russia and China? Obviously, that would change it. Did the Fed actually do what's right and jack interest rates to the moon? I doubt they're going to do that. But if they did, you'd see these prices go much, much further. Nobody's going to pay, you know, for a $500,000 house at 10% interest, right? Not going to happen for most people. So I don't think that's going to happen. It's not that the market can't force interest rates up, though. We'll see. Maybe there's a giant default on the debt. I don't know. Let's find out what happens. But looking at this lower purple line here is just a copy of this curve. And I just dragged it over and put it here. And then I drew another one that seems very realistic to this. And it gave me 2 points to say, okay, well, that seems realistic. The time frames here, this would be maybe we peak out in January of 2023. So if you're at this point and you're saying, oh man, we still got a year left, first off, I don't know that that's going to happen. We may see this start to turn, and then the Federal Reserve starts pumping money into the economy. The government comes up with some new crazy housing program where they, I don't know, buy everybody a house. Who knows? They come up with this crazy stuff now. So this could continue, but that set aside, or universal basic income, right? You get universal basic income. I would be a buyer of homes because I know right away home prices are going to go up, especially if you don't have a ton of supply, right? That it would just get snapped up really quickly. A lot of people who are renting would become home buyers very quickly because their income climbs dramatically. You would not want to be a seller at that time unless you can reprice your home before somebody buys it, because you basically sold your home and then it's going to double in price or something and you're not going to be able to enter the market again. So barring a universal basic income, a giant war, or interest rates going to the moon, I think this is very, very realistic. It's just a repeat. In fact, it is less of a repeat percentage wise than what we had in 2008. This is a 25 to 30% drop depending on where these peaks are, right? Now we're already higher than this peak, but you can see sort of what's happening right here. We have to wait for the new data to come out to see if we're starting to form this curve here. But this would be a great support zone for that you would use as a technical indicator on a chart, right? So I'm going to try and chart this like I do the S&P 500 to see if this comes out to be more accurate in the future, adding together with that different ideas that you'd use as a real estate agent or as a real estate investor, right? You're looking at different types of indicators for your market, but I'm going to use a stock charting method to see if that helps me come to a better conclusion in the long run. So I would assume that we have a very similar decline to this. I don't know if the percentages go as deep as they did before. So, even if they don't, this is representative of something we had here. Slower growth, maybe it comes back up a lot quicker. That part doesn't matter to me. The point is, I can see the move as the decline next year. There's not an 18% year over year increase. Maybe it's 15. And then the following year, maybe it's 5, right? You can see kind of where it's going. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean it's going down, right, through the floor, because look what happened here, right? It went down, then leveled out for a while, and then it went back up, right, after this whole thing in 2020. But I think this price increase year over year is finished. I do not believe we are going to have a 20% price increase over the next 2 years, maybe one more year. But I mean, it could look like this, right? 17%, 16 point something percent, another 15%. It could look like that, but at some point long term, we are coming down. These are becoming unaffordable to a lot of people. Now, again, I don't know. Let's see how much money the government prints in the long term. But anyway, looking at this was a 33% drop from this point using Case Shillers to find the nearest low. Okay, and that was a 3-year run at that point. So here, I just kind of use that same model, but this is a 25 to 30% decline in those prices. But everybody expects this to happen overnight, and that's not going to be the case, right? There's people on both sides of this, people who want to buy a home think it's going to continue going up. And, even the people who want to sell their home kind of want to see the prices go up because they just want to buy something else. But there are investors out there who are selling right now. They believe that it's overpriced. And I think they are going to end up being right overall. You know what made me sell my property in 2018? I had a beautiful property and I was building a house on it, and I was at a gas station, and the attendant at the gas station started telling somebody else, "Oh yeah, you could basically buy a house out here in the country and it goes up 50% in 1 year, and you can flip it to somebody else." And I thought, you know what? It's time to sell because of that person's giving someone investment advice on flipping a home. It is time to sell. And you're seeing that everywhere. I remember back in 2000, 2006 and 7, I had heard about this real estate crash and I started looking into it. Actually, in 2005 is when I first heard about it. And by about mid 2006, I realized this is going to happen. But during that period, right here, during that period, the question is, can you hold on and not buy while prices continue to rise? It's like if you pretended let's use this. This is a stock market, okay? You're buying here, you're thinking, this isn't looking good. This isn't looking good. It can't continue to go higher. I'm going to go ahead and sell. But then you start to see this and you think, "Oh no, did I miss opportunity? Nah, it's going to fall. It's going to fall." And then it gets up here and you think, "Man, maybe I did blow it. Maybe they were right." Right? But then it turns on everybody and ultimately end up becoming right. That's where I think we are right now. I think there's FOMO, the fear of missing out, that, "Oh, I sold my home here. Maybe I should have held on to it." The people who bought back at this point, let's say in 2018, maybe they're still okay in some of these markets, right? Because if you bought and home prices went up 20% a year, like if you're in Idaho or something, your home price went up 60, 70, 100% in some of these areas from when you originally bought it in 2018. Well, 30% drop isn't even going to come down to where you bought it. So you're probably going to be just fine. All I'm saying is I believe overall the market's going to come down somewhere realistically within these price ranges. It's no different than what happened before. And if we look at the RSI, now this is based on this up here, right? The year over year change. You can see kind of what happened here, right? This peaks out before, right? It's more lined up with this. We peak out before. We have this drop. You could see the purple crosses the yellow and we go down. Same thing. We go up here. Now, if we zoomed in, this would look a lot choppier, but we're trying to get a broad picture. But purple crosses yellow, it goes down. Purple crosses yellow, it goes up. So there's one where, okay, well, it doesn't correlate 100%. We have the same type of thing here. But you can see how high we are up in this area right now. And purple is crossing yellow. I think this curve is starting to look more like a curve that's going to head down. We have geopolitical issues going on. We have inflation issues right now. There's affordability issues with homes. And I don't think many people are talking about this, but there are a lot of people starting to miss their rent payments. So that's going to be something to watch out for. But anyway, I would keep your eyes on both of these. You can mark them in TradingView. You can also go to the Federal Reserve's website to pull this information up. You can change more details within these than you can on TradingView. These two just happen to be there. But I would keep your eyes on the housing market here. I think it's going to be a slow decline over the next probably 3 to 4 or so years. Don't always listen to your real estate agents. A lot of times they're telling you that, "Oh no, it's going to keep going." I heard all this stuff in 2006. I had so many friends that were real estate agents telling me, "No, it's going to keep going, man." And they got crushed. What I would do if I was a real estate agent right now, I'd be very careful with my buyers. I'd be telling them, "Hey, this could happen. So let's look at your financial situation, right? Can they really afford the home they're trying to buy?" You want to be that person at the end that basically they come back to and say, "Man, you were right. I should have listened to you." And they send their buddy there. But anyway, this video has got to end in the next 18 seconds, according to TradingView. So pay attention to the housing market. This is a long-term call. Make sure you like and share these videos and comment.